Good evening, I'm Charlene White. CCTV footage has been released of police officers coming under attack as fireworks are thrown directly at their car. The officers were called to reports that a gang was setting fire to bins on an estate. Here's our senior correspondent, Ron K. Phillips.
With fireworks landing all around, the terrifying moment youth launched the attack, the police car barely visible behind several explosions. It's only a miracle one of the rockets didn't go underneath the vehicle, where it could have sparked a fire, trapping the driver inside. Police were called to the Devons estate in Bowen, East London, after reports a group of young men had blocked the road and set fire to a bin. The CCTV camera captures one of them holding the public display-style rocket launchers, and as the patrol car approaches, the group begin firing straight at it. The patrol car begins to edge forward, but then one of the youths brazenly steps out onto Bruce Road and begins firing the rocket directly at the windscreen. The driver is blinded by the light and momentarily is unable to move. Until 4 years ago, a crime intervention group was based on the estate, working to try and keep young people away from gangs and out of trouble.
Let's be very clear, this was an isolated incident and we don't want to scare the community in thinking it was something more. It's terrible what's happened, but what it highlights is that there is a lack of youth intervention provision here in this area, and we used to be based here and we've since moved to another neighbourhood, and there needs to be more resources for organisations like us to prevent this happening again.
The crowd only retreated when the patrol car drove through the smoke towards them. It was unable to pursue the youths down a pedestrianised road because of bollards. A 24-year-old man was later arrested and has been charged in connection with the incident, which by sheer good fortune ended without anyone being injured. Ron K. Phillips, ITV News.
A jury of 7 men and 5 women in the murder case of Claire Tilton retraced the schoolgirl's last steps today, 21 years after she died. Claire was 16 when she was stabbed in an alleyway in Greenhithe in Kent. Colin Ash Smith is on trial for her murder, as Rags Martell reports.
Claire Tilton's memorial, the place she bled to death after being savagely attacked with a knife. Today the jury left the courtroom and boarded a bus to visit the scene of the crime. With the road blocked, they traced the 16-year-old's final steps.
It was in this dark alley that the prosecution say Claire encountered Colin Ash Smith, a man described in court as a knife-obsessed loner. He allegedly attacked Claire rapidly and in a frenzy, stabbing her 9 times, giving her no chance to defend herself or escape.
Ash Smith was arrested in 1995 after he stabbed another woman. That attack also described as seemingly motiveless in court. Jurors followed the route Claire took before she was stabbed. The schoolgirl was on her way to see a friend, but took a detour to buy cigarettes in this shop. According to the prosecution, that decision cost Claire her life, as this shortcut she took on her way back led her to her death. The jury's final visit in Greenhithe, the house of her friend, a place Claire never reached the day she was killed. Ash Smith, who's now 46, denies murder. The trial resumes tomorrow at the Inner London Crown Court. Rags Martell, ITV News, Greenhithe.
A woman from Wandsworth who lost her husband and daughter in a speedboat accident in Cornwall has told a court of her regret that they didn't use the boat's safety device. Victoria Milligan's husband Nick and daughter Emily died after being hit by the boat that they were thrown from in May last year. At the inquest into their deaths, she said they had made a big mistake in not using the boat's kill cord. From Cornwall, Ruth Zolko reports.
More than 250 miles from her home in Wandsworth, Victoria Milligan arrived at Cornwall Coroner's Court this morning, forced to relive the terrible events that killed her husband Nick and her 8-year-old daughter Emily. They died while on holiday here in May last year in a speedboating accident. Today, the inquest heard that they'd been thrown out of their boat, which then circled around them at high speed, hitting them in the water. Mr. Milligan died from a significant head injury, Emily from multiple wounds. Victoria Milligan described how her husband grabbed the wheel while she was driving. She said, "The boat went into a steep turn and threw us in. It was so sudden, bang, we didn't have a chance." The inquest also heard that at the time of the accident, neither Victoria Milligan nor her husband, who she calls Nico, had been wearing a safety device called a kill cord, designed to cut out the engine if the driver falls overboard. She'd taken over from her husband at the helm, and when asked, she said, "I didn't put it back on because I thought Nico was going to come back and take over. Obviously, that was a big mistake." The inquest also heard from some kayakers who were first to arrive to give help. They described paddling through blood in the water and hearing one of the children screaming, "My dad's dead, my dad's dead." A split-second event that pulled apart a loving and happy family. Ruth Zorko, ITV News, Truro.
Police are hunting a burglar who stole medals from the home of an 82-year-old woman in Bromley on Saturday. The medals from the First and Second World Wars had belonged to her father. And London's cycle hire scheme is to be extended to the Queen Elizabeth Olympic Park. 320 docking points across 8 docking stations will be installed. Work to expand the scheme will begin next year. The 4-time Olympic champion sprinter Michael Johnson has told ITV News that athletics must get used to sharing facilities with other sports in order to pay the bills. Speaking at a sports conference in London, he said arrangements like the one at the with West Ham at the Olympic Stadium in Stratford are essential. He spoke to our sports reporter Will Mott.
As one of the world's greatest athletes, Michael Johnson knows all about the potential of the Olympics. So what does he make of London 2 years on?
We can't underestimate the power of that sort of inspiration. It's not measurable. It's been proven over time, with great athletes who will say, they were inspired by a performance that they saw.
But the Olympic Stadium in Stratford's being converted from athletics to football. He told me he doesn't see that as a problem.
My greatest moment, Olympic moment in 1996, the one that I'm most known for, was in a venue that was ultimately turned into a baseball stadium. There has to be a balance between the finances. I mean, you can't take this in a vacuum and say, hey, we want a permanent athletic stadium when an athletic stadium, unlike a football stadium, doesn't, necessarily pay bills.
Now, you raced at the Crystal Palace Athletics Stadium. That's looking like it could be demolished. It's one thing being inspired by great events, but it's another thing when kids need to be able to go up to their local running track and practice.
That would certainly be an issue, and that's an issue that we find around the world with lack of training facilities and coaching and expertise, and it's something that has to be dealt with. It is a very tough situation for athletics, and until we can, as a sport, start to make a better road, make a better way for ourselves as a sport, as opposed to being, kind of always with our hand out saying, hey, help us, give, we have to start creating our own way as a sport.
So there's plenty of work to do.
There's definitely work to be done. Let's just hope it gets done.
Will Mott reporting there. Coming up straight after us this evening is The Agenda with Tom Bradby. Here's Tom with the details.
Tonight on The Agenda, the Chancellor George Osborne, columnist and comedian Victoria Coren-Mitchell, novelist and screenwriter Anthony Horowitz and the founder of Ultimo Lingerie, Michelle Mone. We'll be talking about e-cigarettes and advertising. Is it a good idea? The Tories in Europe, they promised to stop banging on about it. How is that going exactly? And we'll be talking about the new Alan Turing film. Is there anything that happened before the millennium we haven't yet said sorry for? Coming up in a couple of minutes.
Let's take a look at the weather now. Here's Helen.
The seasons make our soups. New Covent Garden Soup sponsors the ITV London weekday weather.
Hello again. Well, low pressure never far away this week, which means tomorrow largely cloudy before some sunshine and showers on the cards for Wednesday. Overnight tonight, though, those clouds really starting to build, particularly from the west, which does at least mean those temperatures manage to stay fairly mild. So up in double figures to start us off tomorrow. So no risk of any frost, but just the outside chance of the odd shower, particularly in the west. Later on, though, those clouds break up a little to allow some brighter spells in the east.
New Covent Garden Soup sponsors the ITV London weekday weather.
Now, a stubborn swan on a runway at Heathrow has had staff in quite a bit of a flap, but the swan refused to move, closing the runway for 10 minutes. The airside safety team nearly solved the problem, but several minutes later, it was still neck and neck. Visit itv.com/London to see how the story ends. That's it from us. We're back on air tomorrow morning, so we'll see you then. Goodbye.